So you said you have your United States citizenship.
Yes.
So you didn't have to like apply for a visa or anything.
No.
So yeah. Can you tell me about that?
Yeah. When I was younger, when my mom was pregnant with me, because she had studied in the U.S. and she knew how difficult it was for her to stay there, for her to study there. She wanted to give a better opportunity to my sister and I. So what she did is, at that time, my parents lived in Tijuana. So my mom had her doctors and everything across the border in San Diego. So a couple of months into the pregnancy, she moved to San Diego so she could have my sister and I on the other side of the border and give us the American citizen. Sort of thinking way ahead and thinking like, hey, if I give them the U.S. citizenship, maybe it'll be, something good for them, something that they can take advantage of and have better, opportunities and everything. So, and I am so thankful that she did that, and that was incredibly smart of her because coming into college, it was not nearly as hard as it would have been if I didn't have a U.S. citizenship. I can stay after graduation. I can go to law school. I was able to take out loans because otherwise I wouldn't have been able to afford Bridgewater. And if you're not a U.S. citizen, you can't take government loans. So all of that has just made everything so much easier. But yeah, my mom was a smart lady.
So it's like the citizenship was like that golden ticket.
Basically, yeah, the U.S. citizenship was my golden ticket.
So you spoke about also that you had been visiting your cousins in Boston every summer. Could you tell me about that and like going to the United States and then coming back to Mexico and like how did you view your summers in Boston?
So every summer that I went to Boston, I've been going to Boston ever since I have a memory. I think since I was 2, and my mom has a cousin there, and they adopted a son and a daughter from Mexico. So they all speak Spanish, and obviously I was little, and my cousin rides. She was actually the one who got me into horseback riding. So every summer I would go with them, and I had the best summers of my life, because they had the American lifestyle, and they had a lot of money, and they had a huge house with a giant pool, and I would just love to go there and swim in the pool all summer and ride my cousin's horses and go to the barn with her. And I remember one of the things that I looked forward the most during the summers was their 4th of July party, because I thought that was so much fun. They always had so many people over, and they did fireworks, and they had drinks, non-alcoholic drinks, obviously for kids. But they were like red, white, and blue, and they had barbecue chicken and everything that's American, and I loved it. And I think every year I would look forward to that.
Thank you. So when did you because you talked about how it was hard to write and read English. So when did you start learning English?
I started learning English as soon as I can remember. As I said, as soon as I came out of the womb, my mom gave us the American citizenship, and she would speak to us in English, and my dad would speak to us in Spanish. All the Disney movies I watched, all the books that I read, all the animated TV shows everything was in English. My mom would always make us watch movies in English with English subtitles, so never even with Spanish subtitles. So I think it was thanks to that I started really, really young, and then obviously in school, but it was not as good. It gave me the chance to understand it and read it and write it, but never in a formal way. It's just like any other kid that starts speaking a second language when they're young. And then obviously going the summers and visiting my cousin, that helped a lot because I went to little summer camps with her at like the library or the gymnastics center or the barn, and I met other people that spoke English. And then I started going to summer camp and working there. So my speaking was perfect since I was little, but I never really got any formal other than the basic school things and grammar and other like writing stuff.
Okay, so I'm gonna stop this for a second because it's beeping. Because I think.
Okay.
So now we can go to the next section, I think, which is kind of like your experience in the United States. Um, so we're gonna. Okay, so what do you enjoy most about the United States, and how did you figure that out, if anything?
I think what I enjoyed most about coming to college in the United States, because obviously I had travel in Boston with my family. I've been to summer camps, but it was mostly with international people, so I was never really, that American. Um, it was the independence. The being by yourself, I have my own car, they're doing whatever you want, they're coming back at whatever time you want. Because as I said, I even though my family is very close and very conservative and everything, you still live under the roof and under the rules and under the man in the house rules and stuff. And you don't move out, not even to go to college. Like everyone stays at home and they commute to college. There's no dorms or anything. Even after college, they stay at home until you get married. You move out. But as long as you live at home with your parents, you do what they say. And that was seen as normal because, that's how I grew up with. So I never really had much. I went out and I had to be back at a certain time. I was like, hey, can I go? And they would say no. And I would be like, okay, I won't do that. And then I came here and I realized how different it was to be by yourself and be able to do whatever you want all the time, go wherever you want, come back at whatever time you want it, and just basically be you. Like you can't. I can't even leave the house at home without making my bed and my mom yelling at me. Stuff like that. So I think that was very different, and it's really funny because I once told my sister, which she's older than me, and she still lives at home because she's in Mexico. I told her, I love mom and dad, but I don't think I could go back to living with them at their house. And she was so mad at me. She's like, why? They gave all of this to you. And how can you say that about them? And you don't love them. And I was like, no, I do. But it's just so much different once you experience the independence. And then she visited me for 6 months and lived in an apartment by herself and a couple of the roommates. And at the end of the semester, she told me, I don't think I can move in back with my mom and my dad. And I was like, I told you.
It's kind of like you get to be an adult.
Yeah, exactly. You get to be an adult. You're independent. You're by yourself, which is what it should be, because who wants a 22-year-old being told to make their bed when they leave their house, or being told like, hey, you have to be back at midnight even though you're going to go out for a few drinks with you? No, no one wants that. But in Mexico, it's very common, and they do it. My friends do it because it's normal. It's the norm. So.
Thank you. Cool. So a question about like how other people might react to you. How do you feel people view you when they learn that you're an international student from Mexico? In any experiences you've had?
Anywhere in the U.S. when I come and I tell them that usually I don't tell them where I'm from until they notice, because they don't ask until they notice I have an accent. And they're like, hey, you have an accent. Where are you from? And then I tell them Mexico. Most of the time, like 85% of the time, they don't believe me. They're like, no way. I'm like, yeah, I'm an international student from Mexico, or I'm from Mexico. And they, most of the time, say, you don't look Mexican. And I always think to myself, well, what do a Mexican supposed to look like? So usually people don't believe me when I tell them I'm an international student from Mexico.
Do you ever ask them, do you ever ask them, like, what, did they have, like, a preconception of what a Mexican is?
I've always wanted to ask someone what they think a Mexican looks like, but I've never had, because usually they're strangers, so I never had the courage to really ask them what they think a Mexican should look like. But you could assume it's the, short, brown type of Mexican that people see in the movies, or the stereotypical Mexican.
So, have you ever had any negative experiences or super positive ones?
Well, I guess I hadn't have any negative experiences, part because I don't look Mexican, so it doesn't really, like, people don't register when they're, talking badly about Mexicans, or when this is going on, because they just assume that I'm not Mexican. I was sitting at a table in the KCC once during the presidential elections.
Could you define
Yes, I was sitting at the school cafeteria one day during the presidential elections of 2016, and I was sitting with a bunch of people that I didn't know, because I was sitting with one of my friends, and they were talking about the candidates and the campaign and all of the stuff, and I wasn't saying anything because I didn't know the people there. And one of the guys said, um, something about the wall and how Mexicans should stay out of the U.S. without realizing, because they don't realize it. So I just turned to this guy and I told him, "You do realize that I'm Mexican, right?" And the whole table just went quiet. He didn't know. And they say this stuff, so it kind of like happens indirectly. Another example, I was at my global politics class when I was sophomore year, same time around after the elections that next semester. And they were talking about, one of the guys sitting in the back was talking about how he had a farm where his family did plant Christmas trees and then sold them. And he was like, "No, we were talking about this idea, and he was like, "No, let those immigrants come from Mexico, because those are the ones who work at my farm, and it will be the only way that we can make a farm work." So, this little, and I was just sitting there, and the professor knew obviously that I was from Mexico, and he pulled me aside after class and apologized because of this comments guy, and he's like, "They don't know better. Like, he doesn't know that you are." So directly, I hadn't had any negative experiences, but indirectly, I have.
So do you think, so when people figure out that you are Mexican, they realize that, oh, maybe this stereotype in my head isn't true? Do you think that happens for people sometimes?
Yes, I do. I think that once they realize that I'm Mexican, they erases a lot of those stereotypes, especially even my close friends that never had contacts with Mexicans before. Obviously, my friends had never said anything, that, "Hey, you don't look Mexican," or anything, but they have gotten to know me and my culture to one point that all those stereotypes are erased, and they understand me and they understand my culture, and I love that. I had one of my best friends visit me during the summer. She went with me to Mexico, and she said it was one of the most amazing trips of her lifetime. But when before she met me, she would have never thought about going to Mexico because she thought it was so dangerous. And she said I would go again because it was so cool. Everything was amazing. The people, the food, the culture. I didn't feel unsafe once. So I think through me, a lot of those things kind of break, even though they don't necessarily think in that way or have those stereotypes. In the back of your head, they are. So eventually, I think yes, I think it has helped a lot of people, and that makes me really happy.
Thank you. Okay, so we're gonna move on to kind of your Bridgewater experience more specifically. So how do you feel on Bridgewater's campus? And compare how you felt like when you first arrived to now,
Oh my god. It's such a big difference to when I first arrived to Bridgewater, and obviously now my senior year. So when I first arrived at Bridgewater, I've never been here before. I've been to Virginia because at the summer camp that I worked at is 45 minutes away from Bridgewater. But I remember my parents brought me for orientation, and this was the first time that we've ever been here, and we took the back way to Bridgewater. And we are obviously from the second biggest city besides Mexico City in Mexico. We always lived in the city. And we were driving back, and there was nothing. It was just fields and fields and fields because it was the back way. And the whole car was just dead quiet. No one said anything, but you could tell that everyone was thinking. There was just this tension in the car that, oh my god, what the hell are we doing?